thank you so much for inviting me to speak here today. I'm actually standing in for Rachel, who unfortunately, who was supposed to be speaking. She's been doing all the work with the team this year and unfortunately has had to have an operation last minute. And so David asked me to speak. So I don't know you at all. I have no idea. I have a rough idea where you're coming from, but you don't know me. So this is going to be fun. And my aim for this morning is really just to throw some questions out to you and some get you to start thinking, really, so you can get the most from your day. But before we start, have you introduced yourselves to each other? Do you know each other? If not, turn around and say hello to someone you don't know. I like a bit of connection in the room before we start. Go. Okay, that's good. And stop. Beautiful, look at that, fantastic. It's really weird when you're sitting next to someone you haven't said hello, don't you think? It's just sort of a weird thing, so that's good. So my name's Emma Collins and I'm going to touch on culture, change, courage and connection today. Some of my absolute most favourite topics and it's clearly appropriate given what BDA have just been going through and are going through in terms of their own sense of change and connection with themselves and therefore new connections with you. So yes, I am Collins & Co. I am the Collins, and obviously there are some co's. And colleagues that I work with, depending on what I'm doing, but also for me, co is connection, conscious awareness, communication, collaboration, cocktails, coffee. It works on so many levels for me. But I set up in business on my own about 11 years ago, having been MD of a design agency prior to that, and I'll touch on that. But I essentially was passionate about the relationship between creativity and business, and that for me they're two sides of the same coin. And I saw too many creatives being undervalued and not understanding their value or how to talk about their value within the power of design. And creativity. I'm a singer. I have lots of artist and designer friends, and I was getting pissed off with seeing them ripped off all the time. And businesses, so many straight businesses, not really understanding how to ignite creativity within their organisations or to connect with it with external agencies. So for me, it was about trying to combine that and straddle, because I sit somewhere in the middle of that. I'm sort of straight enough to think about business and strategy, but creative enough that, so I love the combination. So I kind of work with creative organisations, companies going through change, leadership programs, coaching, that kind of stuff. Okay, so last year I was working with the BBC with their UX department with 24 creative directors, and at the same time working with just one project manager who needed some confidence stuff in a film company. So a kind of varied mix. So like I said, I used to be MD of the design agency Home, who specialise in employee engagement and what meaning truly is for staff within their organisations. I was with them for 4 or 5 years and took them through a change management process. Before that, I set up an award-winning organic vegetarian cafe, which was about 15, 16 years ago now, which was ahead of its time. And this morning, or today, is very much about thinking differently and breaking through barriers and being groundbreaking, hopefully. And this was, in terms of Bristol, and it was at the forefront of changing attitudes towards eating out from a vegetarian point of view. This wasn't about not eating meat, actually. It was about being able to be organic, and so to keep the costs down, it made sense to go vegetarian. But that's a whole other story. But anyway, I have a varied past. Before that, I was marketing director at the Soil Association and repositioned them from being very farmer-facing, and it was all about wellies and soil, to much more consumer-facing and talking about your children and no pesticides and so on. So, which was an interesting time because it was when GM had just suddenly come up and Monsanto were doing lots of awful things, which they still are. And in my 20s, I spent about 8 years working for the Spastic Society, which became Scope, in a range of fundraising and marketing and PR roles. And I was on the team that actually did the brand change to become Scope, which was momentous at the time because charities really hadn't started to get their heads around branding as a concept. But for me, in terms of being part of something that was actively looking at changing attitudes towards disability and the use of language. Very proud of that time. So I've always been involved in change. I love it. I love it apart from when it happens to me and I wasn't expecting it. Then I can't stand it and I take a while to catch up. And we all have weird relationships with change. Yeah, some of us are more resistant, some of us are more embracing, and then again it depends on the flavour and the time of day and what else is going on in your life. So I was reflecting on change in general and what the hell's been going on in our world, and this combines everything for me about this man. I love it. It's got hands. I guess you've seen the whole water thing with him taking the sip. It's just so gross. But for me, this whole what the hell's been going on in the world, but that perhaps it's going to lead to even more profound positive change. That's what I'm eternally optimistic about. I was suicidally depressed for a while, but now I'm thrilled about, I think, the change that's going to come on the back of some stuff. Anyway, I'm not going to go into the massive political landscape because I could go sidetracking on that all morning, but there is a context that impacts on all our businesses and all our organisations, politically, environmentally, and so on. And to not be connected and aware of all of that and the immediate effects that has on us day to day would be foolish. This is change in my world in the last few days because I think it's about bringing it back to the personal. This is my daughter's bookcase, and on Sunday night, she's 14, she announced to me she hates purple. She said, "Mum, I really don't know why I chose purple when we moved into the house. I really don't like purple anymore. I don't like that colour. I really don't like the curtains. I don't like the lampshade, or that colour purple. Okay, we need to change this." So, change happens to us all of the time. I'm in the change, the biggest change that's going on, and I promised my online menopausal women forum that I would talk about this right now as a bet, because it's a feminist issue and I'm breaking the taboo, but this is a massive change. And yes, if I start losing my memory or coming over in a hot flush, you will know what is going on. I'm determined to out it. On a more really sad note, on Monday I found out that this dear man and friend died at the start of the month, and he was my personal development tutor when I did a management degree about 20 years ago, my mentor and a bit of a guru when it comes to organisational psychology, and he'd been ill, and I'm devastated. And he's very present with me at the moment. I really wanted to bring him in the room because he would have wanted to be here because all his work was within organisations and within teams and groups. And he was absolutely committed to you understanding your purpose. And whenever you come together as a group of people, why are you there? Why are you in the room here today? Why do we get together in a team meeting? Why are we pulling together as an organisation? That's what he asks all the time. And an amazing man, so this was more change. And then, because of this incredible human being and a whole load of connectivity and social media power, the changes that are now happening to the likes of McDonald's and Iceland and so on, the whole issues around using cups, coffee cups, straws, the plastic, which has been building over time, but it now feels like it's really taking hold, and consumers are saying no. And it's having a huge impact on massive corporations. Hell yeah. And for me, that connectivity that's as a result of technology and digital capability is what's going to drive some exciting change. They're McDonald's goals for sustainability by 2025 and all the rest of it. You can have a debate about because I'm not that impressed. But the point is, change is happening all of the time. And how does that impact on your business? But of course, we can be slow. We can be slow to take up change. And I was slow to get rid of the vinyl. Right? Now it's all coming back in, and I wish I hadn't ever got rid of it. I wish I'd kept it in the attic. I was really slow to get rid of the vinyl. And I am only just about to do this. I'm not an early adopter in some technological ways, but I'm really pleased because now Alexa is part of the ones that I'm going to buy, and I don't have to add extra gadgets to what I'm going to get. So we're all changing and evolving every single day. The skin cells that are coming off of our body in the shower, it's just a constant process. And so for you in your organisations, you don't necessarily have to be about new models or changing industries, but it is about not doing things the same. And it's too easy to stagnate, and it's too easy to get stuck in a rut because of your hierarchies, because of your bosses, because of resources, because you can't be asked, because it's too hard. There are lots of reasons why we choose not to proactively choose change. So, yes, the most dangerous phrase in the language is, it's because we've always done it that way. Nothing like that comment makes me want to get a little bit irritated. So we don't want to be like Kodak and missing the boat when it comes to big changes. And on the sigmoid curve, where are you? Where are you in terms of knowing when you've hit that moment in your business when you are safe and comfortable, but if you don't start looking as to what's happening around you and how you're going to reignite a new curve of growth, things can go that way. So it's interesting for you to think about, where do you feel you are in your business right now? And there may be differences depending on the size of your organisation, what you're doing within your own departments or areas, but then what's happening at a bigger scale within your company. The likes of Airbnb turned things upside down. Lego have when they went dipped, they've now reinvented themselves. And I was with my niece the other day, and she is in the purple phase and is ecstatic with the lilac and purple bricks that now exist. It's exciting. Change can be exciting. And for Lego, getting really behind their mission to inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow. How connected are you with your purpose, with your mission as an organisation, and how does that drive some of your strategy and innovation? It doesn't have to be that you change industry. It doesn't have to be that you create a new model. It could just be you do a shit-hot campaign like this one for breast cancer awareness that reached 166 million people in 3 weeks. That, for me, is phenomenal, valuable content that emotionally connects and literally changes lives. That, for me, is the perfect combination. When you're connecting in that way to your audiences in a way that's meaningful and absolutely delivers on your organisational purpose using technology in appropriate ways. That's like the sweet spot. So, Brian Solis, analyst, technology guy, Generation C, which I'm sure you'll hear about today. The talks that you've got lined up today are going to get you thinking differently about how you can be moving forwards within your businesses. But the thing that excites me about Generation C, which is not about an age bracket, is that it's about connection, which I believe we are all truly connected anyway, on a spiritual basis, on a kind of worldwide basis. But what happens now through technology advances is that you start to see people being pulled together based on what they're interested in, based on what's driving their behaviours, not on old-style demographics. So for me, you can imagine Collins and Co. with the C. I'm really happy about a Generation C, and that's my daughter. It's as well, it's part of her. So connection, I'm just checking on time, connection for me is where it's at, and your connection in your roles. So how many of you are leaders? How many of you are not leaders because you don't have because there's something interesting here, because the perception. So how many of you didn't put your hands up, and why would you say you're not a leader? The moment where the floor goes silent. I'm looking at the man with the beard and the glasses.
Which one?
Yeah, you. Yeah, you. Hello. Because it's interesting, isn't it, that thing about hierarchy and title and authority. And of course, what comes with that is responsibilities for strategy, for leading, for vision, for setting a vision. But for me, leadership is about anyone who holds themselves accountable to finding potential in process and people. We can all lead, we can all be inspired, we can all be connected to what's going on and coming up with ideas and pushing things forward. So it's interesting for me as to how you perceive yourselves and your relationship with everything else that you're going to hear today, and what power and autonomy do you have to create change and to drive through new ideas and to think differently. And of course, a role of leadership is to know where you are, but to know where you want to go. So I'm just going to take a couple of moments, just a few seconds of quiet, in your lovely new pads. You might want to use them to capture something about, if we were all standing here again this time next year, I was standing, you were sitting, obviously, what would be happening in your organisation? If I could wave a magic wand right now and give you everything you needed, don't let any barriers get in the way, the person that annoys you around the corner, or the lack of resources because your budgets have just been cut, whatever it is, don't let any of that get in the way. This time next year, if I could wave a magic wand, where would you want your organisation to be? What would look and feel different? Write it down. Don't think about it too hard. Anything. It can be small. It can be massive. It can be life-changing. It can be a new poster in the ladies' loo. It doesn't matter. What needs to be different about your organisation by this time next year? You have a magic wand. You can make anything happen. And second point with regards to that is, what's your relationship with making that happen? Is what you've just written outside of you? Is it nothing to do with you? Is it just something you like? Or is it something that you can actually have an impact on? Would anyone care to share? Hey, boss man. Yes, you. What did you write? Putting you on the spot.
Growth, expanding our buildings and premises.
Okay, great.
And driving.
Cool. That's a very visual, and you'll know where you get there. There's nothing like setting a goal and being able to really visually know what it would look like. Fantastic. Anyone else like to share? Thank you.
So I work for a large networking company,
Yep.
and our biggest challenge is that connection with the sales team, making
Right.
them understand what
Right.
the marketing department do. We're not just
Yeah.
colouring in canapes.
Yeah.
We want them to really have that connection and value what we contribute to their
Brilliant.
part of the organisation. So that's what
Fantastic.
And I'd like to make them social advocates, because they've got
Great.
the network and we need to access that.
Great. So everybody, what's the first step this lady could take? You're going to have a mass little, I wonder, anyone can chuck in an idea, and you're going to start it with, I wonder if you. Go. Somebody, have a thought about what this lady might want to do to make that happen by this time next year.
A cocktail party.
Great. I wonder if you had a cocktail party to invite them all to talk about this, yes? And to explore where the barriers are. Yeah, what else?
Take the colouring pencils away.
Yeah.
What else?
Have a circumference where they come over and see what you do.
Nice. Yeah. I wonder if a shadowing thing we could do, or
Yeah.
something to explore, and or whether we could sit in each other's areas for a while and swap around and see what that feels like to break down some of the barriers between departments. What else? I wonder if have you had any thoughts?
Mine's more about getting them to, so the nature of the job that I've done over the course of the last 6 years while I've been there, the team has expanded, there's a lot of change in role.
Yeah.
I think it's about making them understand who you are. It's a bit about personal PR within the business. So
Great.
that's kind of my
Yes.
thing, is to help them understand what
Great.
you're bringing to the
Great.
organisation.
And how many are in your team, your immediate team?
I'm a team of about 15
Great.
marketers.
So that's strategy for all of you,
Yeah.
not just you, so that everybody's joined up in that. Great. Okay, I'm going to move on. Because I want you to hold these thoughts with you for the day. If there are these things that you want to have achieved by next year, how can all the information that you get through all the talks that happen this day help inform and guide you and help you manifest what it is you want to have happened, what change you want to make happen by this time next year? So your role as a leader is to make a conscious connection, in my opinion, between you and your customers. But before you get to your customers, what happens on the inside of your organisation? So, how defined is your role? How clear is your business purpose and values and vision and culture? How do you encourage creativity and innovation? And how do you embrace change to create growth and reach your potential? There is a relationship between all of it. And seeing how that system works is essential when you start planning your external marketing strategies. Because all of the wonderful technological changes that can come about to create real impact and real change for your business will be even stronger and more easier to access if on the inside of your organisation these things are joined up. So that, how the things work together is essential. So I've already asked you, where are you on the curve? But it's worth thinking about as the course of today. And how could some of the information that comes up today help you get ahead of the next curve? So I just want you to imagine, if you were on that next curve, is there one action you might be taking in the next month? To get on, if you don't think you're currently about to get on that next curve or doing anything about it, what's one action you could take to make that happen? Or you may already be there, in which case, that's cool, that's wonderful. Anybody not there but thinks they'd like to be? Silence. Are you all already there? Is that what it is? That's fantastic. Brilliant. Okay, so moving on. Ding. I'm conscious of I've got so much more to say. We're right for another 5?
Yes.
Okay, so I want you to be thinking today about your relationship with change. Do you personally resist it, or do you embrace it? And be mindful of those you work with, within your teams or your bosses, or the senior management, whatever that structure is within your organisation. What does it look and feel like when you're trying to push through change? And what can you be doing internally to address that? Do you know the work of Carol Dweck in growth mindsets? Yes? For those of you who don't, look it up. Great TEDs, this is my shortcut version of explaining stuff, okay? Look it up. Great TED talk. Understand that there are fixed and growth mindsets in terms of whether people believe they are set with their levels of intelligence and talent and ability. When you're working with people with a fixed mindset, it's much more difficult to push through change. When you start understanding the differences, and we all swap between different, depending on what it is we're addressing, but quite often we tend to have a more favoured position. Once you start understanding what that looks and feels like, you can start seeing it in your colleagues. And that helps you then to maybe approach challenges between departments or whatever when you're trying to get through change. So if you're on this curve and you're about to push through some change, that's great, but be mindful of who you're taking with you, how you're taking them with you, and whether mindset is a crucial part of the mix within that. As leaders, what we're looking for is people to be leading above the line. And by above the line, what we mean is to be open and curious and committed to learning, not closed, defensive, and committed to being right. There's still a lot of old-style leaders who believe they're the people that have to have all the answers. That is not the case. You just need to facilitate and get to them. Your people quite often have the answers. So being ego-driven and stuck in that space can be a real barrier to change. So think about, again, are you above or below the line in the moment? Raise your awareness in the moment to know about your behaviour, to know, what am I doing right now? Am I open? Am I encouraging creativity? And am I encouraging growth or not? And what about my peers? So think about the barriers in your organisation to innovation and change. It could be closed minds. It could be poor communication. It could be fear of failure, old habits, loss of control. There are many barriers, and being aware of what they are for you individually, for your team, and for your wider company is really important when you're trying to push through new innovation and change. And have a think about which barriers are most difficult for you to overcome. Do you personally allow yourself to be creative? And are there any barriers that you would like to change within your organisation that you can actively do something about? Reactive leadership mindsets, I'm not going to go into this in big detail, but have disengaged cultures. And as you can imagine, creative leadership mindsets have courage, empathy, trust, and so on. So understanding your culture, what kind of culture it is, and whether it's engaged and open to creativity, will be a much richer soil from which to create this change and embrace new ideas and new technology. So, making sure you understand what your purpose and your meaning is in your organisation, know your values, behaviours and rituals, create psychological safety. Go to IDEO to find out more about that, but it's essentially about trust and creating an environment where ideas are welcomed and encouraged. And yes, so hang on, I was going to go into this in more detail. And the work of Brené Brown, people know Brené Brown? Okay, she is my goddess. So look her up again. TED Talk on vulnerability, but in terms of leadership, creating, being vulnerable as leaders, which basically means being open to other people, having the answers, stepping into the ring and knowing that you don't always have the answers, showing up, saying, hey, I messed up here, I didn't do something quite right, creating a really positive environment. So embrace connection, embrace vulnerability. So this year, how do you embrace creativity, new ideas, and change in a way that is brave, exciting, and drives connection? Before we close, 30 more seconds, because I'd like you to answer that very quickly for yourselves in your lovely new pads. So I hope that's just opened your brain slightly and got you thinking, and that you enjoy the rest of your day. I know the talks are going to be really varied and interesting, and I hope that in a year from now, not only have you achieved those goals that you've written down, but actually during the course of today you've thought of all kinds of wonderful new ideas that you can potentially embrace for your business. Thank you very much. Cheers.
So, does anybody have any questions for Emma? You want your cup of tea? So anybody got anything they want to ask? Emma, before you go...
That was so quick.
Yeah, I know, we're running a little bit behind schedule, as you can tell.
Sorry.
But anyway, Emma, I've got a quick question for
Yes.
you. What do you think are the most important steps when you want to make change effective?
Well, know what it is that you want to make happen, understand who's with you and who's against you, break down the steps, vision it so that you can manifest, in terms of actually any goal you want to make happen, envision it so that having a new space is a great one, an easy one, because you know what it looks like when you've got there. So whatever it is you're trying to make happen, and whoever you're doing it with, engage them in the process, so that you can together visualise, and whether that literally means cutting and pasting and tearing out magazines and, visualise it, so that you will recognise it when you get there. It's important to make it as visual and alive as possible, because then everyone buys into, I understand. We don't always understand words. Sometimes it's much easier to understand pictures. So, and then come back from the steps and make sure at each point that everyone's checking in, so communication is essential. And being able to be honest and vulnerable and say, I'm pissed off right now, we're not doing this how I thought we were going to do it, that kind of open leadership style. So yeah, quite a few. Did that answer the question?
I think it did, yes. I think it did.